Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm Jim Vrettos. I'm your host, and I'm a sociologist who has taught at John Jay College and Yeshiva University here in New York City. Very few rap artists have been able to inspire the trust, love, and political action of so many people from all walks of life and cultures as our guest on today's show. His artistry cuts across musical genres. His lyrics and life unflinchingly focus on controversial issues in global politics in ways that are rarely seen in the world of political rap. Racism, world revolution, war, environmental justice, socialism, rape, famine, colonialism, many more are among his themes. His hardcore brand of street politics, revolutionary love, and production control over his music has led to a fierce creative independence earned by many rappers and respected by his vast audience. Immortal Technique, born Felipe Coronel, immigrated to Harlem in the early 1980s while the Civil War was breaking out in his native Peru. He saw as a child firsthand the realities and consequences of what a U.S. supported military puppet regime could do to a people in their homeland. The bitter struggles others were experiencing in much of Latin and South America and throughout the Third World came to be reflected in his albums, Revolutionary Volume 1, which contained the underground classic Dance with the Devil, and in Revolutionary Volume 2, where his music was featured in many albums, including Mary Von Peebles' film Badass. The Third World, The Martyr, and Middle Passage were later albums that solidified his standing as a premier political rapper generation. Throughout his career, Felipe has regularly visited and talked with young people in prison, worked with immigrant rights activists, created writing grant programs for high school students, and raised money for children's hospitals and orphanages overseas without corporate or external funding. He's recently founded and is actively operating a food project called Rebel Army Runs, taking on the issue of hunger and food insecurity in low wage and low income working class and poor communities around New York City. Like the prophets of the scriptures, the Rebel Army Runs has become part of his revolutionary moral message and musical global journey to take on greed, poverty, and injustice. When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me drink? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was sick, did you care for me? Felipe put it this way in his recent work, Rich Man's World. There is no America. There is no democracy. The world is a college of corporations inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. Only little people pay all these taxes and fees. Since you were born, we controlled what you watch and you read. And pretty soon, we're going to own the air that you breathe. I take what I want. I don't have to say please. I'll convince you that it's good for you. Take it and leave. You think presidents are the face of a nation? I put them all where they are. End of the conversation. Welcome to the Radical Imagination. Hello, peace. It's great to see you. It's not the end of the conversation; it's the beginning of our conversation. I'm so happy to see you. I haven't seen you for a while, and it's just a blessing to have you back. How
Well,
you
thank you
doing?
very much. Thank you very much for having me on the show. Um, we've been going full steam with the charity. As a matter of fact, we were in Harlem this morning giving out 65 packs of food. So, we're just going to keep the same energy.
Tell us a little about that project. How did it get started?
No, I
I'll
was going to
you up.
say, the Rebel Army Runs was based on the Black Panther breakfast program, except that we couldn't serve hot food. We couldn't serve um, perishables. So what we had to do in order to work in conjunction with the city, because the city is during the pandemic started cracking down in a lot of places. Um, Restaurants were shut down initially. Basically, anyone who wasn't adhering to the protocols. So we adhere to 100% of the protocols, mask and gloves when we bag everything up, and then when we put it out there, because we are servicing the 1% of the community that is immunocompromised. So when I hear the contrarians talk about coronavirus and I hear them say, oh, well, it's 99 point something percent of a recovery rate. I said, yeah, if you're a young person, but if you're an elder and if you're 70, 80 years old, a lot of these people's immune systems are already compromised. So those are the people that are actually put at danger the most. Danger by whatever policies, whoever you want to say, by the denial of the virus on the right, by the mishandling of the virus on the quote unquote left. I mean, it doesn't matter. We're not playing politics here in the American spectrum, so to speak. What we're doing is trying to fulfill the need for people who have lost their jobs. And a lot of these people, they had some kind of employment or some part-time employment as an elderly person or as a single parent, and it's gone now. The majority of all the jobs that were lost, I think, what is it, 99.9 some odd percent of them were women, and they were women of color. So I feel like in this case, we're doing whatever we can to make up for the lack of resources and the need that's there. A lot of people's checks haven't come. The stimulus wasn't what was promised. And I feel like when people complain about socialism in this country, they complain about the wrong kind of socialism, because you're sitting here and a big piece of your check is actually going to corporate subsidies, but you're angrier at the homeless people that only like a few dollars out of your check is coming out of. And so I can understand people's anger, but their anger is misplaced. And it's honestly used in a 24-hour news cycle of people that want to flame the embers of a culture war rather than coming up with a veritable solution for it. So people are still online screaming about cancel culture because a bunch of right-wing YouTube grifters have to be accountable for what they say, and yet there's no mention of the countless numbers of people at unions fighting, people fighting for higher wages that were totally blacklisted, that people that were totally defamed, people that were slandered in ways that we haven't seen in today's commercial cancel culture. So our job and our responsibility is just to take care of those people that we see that are the most at risk. So what we started doing is we created a 2-week food pack. We found a wholesaler that wholesales to supermarkets, and we approached them, and they were more than generous enough to, although they don't want to be named, they were more than generous enough to allow us to buy wholesale goods and then be able to create roughly it's roughly between 60 and 100 food packs depending on where we are. So when it's 100, and so then I usually have another car on standby or another person that is helping me to be able to take the packs there. But I can fit like roughly about 60 or 70 of those food packs in my car, 60, 75. So at most, like we did this program down in Philadelphia. So we went to Locust Street in West Philly, which, man, hit really hard. The residents are living in poverty down there, Jim. And we extended the olive branch, and we said, man, it's nothing but love between Philly and New York, man. Let us come down there and help out. And the Free Mumia Coalition and just a really, really genuine group of people that wanted to volunteer and helped us to deliver these packages to people who couldn't leave their home for medical reasons, for other reasons. A lot of people are stuck in the house, and it's not that they're quarantined, it's just they're old and they don't have a lot of range of mobility, or that no one's taking care of them. And I remind people of something, especially the young people that are watching this program, all 12 of you, right? All 12 of you young people that are watching this. Remember, once a man, twice a baby, right? If you make it far enough in life for you not to get shot when you were a kid, people have shot at me and they missed, Jim. People have tried to stab me and they missed. If you can get by all those obstacles and you beat heart disease in the 40s and 50s, right? Then you start to beat immune deficiency syndrome and whatever it may be. Anything that life is going to throw at you that you duck or miss or anything. If you finally get to be old, right? You finally get to be an elder. You know what's waiting for you? A society that doesn't care about you. A society that's waiting for you to die so they can pick your bones and take what they want. And unfortunately, in this culture, it's become acceptable. And this reinforces what I've always said, that America may be a technologically superior nation, but that doesn't imply that it's a morally superior country. Right? In other cultures and in other people's way of life, we don't view elders as expendable. We don't view them as things that we crumple up and throw away. You know, they're less. Why do less Latino people, quote unquote Latino people, send their parents to nursing homes? Is it because we did a lot of research about nursing homes and we realized that they brutalize and ignore people? No, it's because it's part of our culture to show the next generation this is what you want to aspire to. You want to aspire to being old and surrounded by your entire family. And every once in a while, you drop some knowledge and we slowly get to watch you deteriorate. But at the end of the day, we love you. You belong to us and you're a part of our family. And
Yeah.
people don't get to hear that a lot. So we're telling the average, ordinary citizens on the street, we love you. You're a part of our family. Please hold on for a little bit longer, man. We need you.
Man, that's so profoundly important. You're bringing in again the history of the Panthers, the Young Lords, and their attempts to feed people, young people in the communities, in the schools. You've taken your own family background, and I know we shared conversations on your dear grandmother that passed away. Correct? She lived to be 100. Correct? So there's this
105.
105, and this is in Peru, and I know you were so close to her, and the love and respect for your own family and your wonderful mother and father and the elders in your family gets brought into this political consciousness and activism, reaching out to the larger community in New York City. Here, it's incredible how you do this, and also using a business acumen. I mean, you've gotten wholesalers who have helped you out, you've got distributors, and you're building up a program. This has only started, what, a few months ago, correct? And it's really moving on and reaching out a lot of people.
In April, it'll be 1 year.
One
In the
year,
beginning of
okay.
April, it'll be 1 year. We started the program early in April, but technically the first delivery we made was in late March to a Bronx organization that was basically helping like homeless families and stuff like that. So they needed extra resources. So I went and contacted the wholesaler and I said, "Hey man, can we take care of these people? You know, I'm going to get it for them." And they were really understanding. They were like, "All right, cool, no problem." So when it came time for me to expand the program, and I said, "Listen, we'd like to make this a regular thing. Um, we're just getting bulk supplies to put in these packs for these people." And you know, these people need money just like everybody else, so they weren't
Right,
upset about it.
right,
But they were more
right.
than happy to see that other people cared about this. I just want to make a particular point
Sure.
as to the history of all this. Um, when it comes to myself, I was born in 1978. So when I was a kid, there were 12 channels on TV. When most of the elders in my community were a kid, there were only 3 channels on TV, and TV was black and white. And the reality is that now there are over 20,000 channels on television, Jim. And
Yeah.
the residents came to me, and some of the elders in my community were a little scared watching the news. And I can't blame them. On one channel, it's total denial, like COVID is a hoax, and now Fox is forced to backtrack on that. And then on the other liberal channels or quasi neoliberal channels, it became
Right.
a total fear mongering, right? No mention of someone boosting their immune system, no mention of eating healthier, no mention of all the things that a person could do to reduce their chance of coronavirus. Just wear a mask and shut up and obey. And I feel like we forget that this idea of cancel culture and these things that the new right has come up with for the left, that it's just biting the old ideas that the old left was plagued with. Cancel culture. Well, that's what McCarthyism was. You tried to cancel everybody that didn't believe in what you believed in, right? If liberals in this country got anything, they learned it all from conservatives 20, 30 years ago, because they haven't changed and they haven't moved towards progressiveness. And I'm afraid that what I'm doing right now is exemplifying to people and saying, hey, not just, hey, I can do this, but Jim, I'm not the richest rapper out of all the people that I know. I'm not the most financially successful out of all the one I know. I'm not the person out of all the circle of my friends who has the most money. And I'm not trying to shame those people, because otherwise I would call them out publicly. But I'm trying to show them by example and say, hey, listen, do you know that just with a little tiny nothing from your giant, quarterly, you could end up funding and changing people's lives? And I get it. Maybe you don't care, but do me a favor. When you don't care, don't pretend that when you get exposed for not caring, that you're really a good person. You're really that scumbag that just doesn't care, right? You want the right to not care, which is the problem here. You have the right to not care, and people have the right to look down on you for it. I think people forget that we got into this situation where we have like this disproportionate amount of power or disproportionate amount of hands in the government very slowly. It wasn't overnight, right? There was the 9/11 effect in which all politics shifted to the right. Right? We had the Giuliani era, where Giuliani was a person that was totally whitewashed by right-wing media and a lot by liberals as well. Totally whitewashed. For example, Jim, you and I both know that these clean air, these like like the laws that we passed that were basically structured as something that was meant to clean up society, the whole clean up New York facade, right? Really, what he did was to say, it's my right to not see a homeless person as a taxpayer. So I want you to make these people disappear. You talk about a cancel culture. I have the right not to see you because you're poor. I want to cancel you. And I want, you know what? You don't belong in a mental institution where you should be because you're mentally ill and you're on the street. You belong in prison. Send those people to jail with the rapists and the murderers. You talk about a cancel culture. That's what's been going on. So I feel like we have to put things back into perspective, and it shouldn't just be a charity to set up a foundation so you can pay yourself. No, stop. The people have began using NGOs as a huge scam overseas to pay themselves a salary to do nothing, right? To live a fake philanthropist life. And I'm afraid that's what it is. And if I could just go back to presidential politics and segue with this, is that unfortunately the last two presidents disappointed in many ways, because Mr. Obama made progressives feel like they were made liberals feel like they were progressives when they really weren't, and Trump made stupid people feel smart, right? So people all of a sudden became a medical expert, right, overnight, or became a constitutional expert when they hadn't realized how all of these things had been kind of nibbled away at. These freedoms have been nibbled away, and all of a sudden they just come out of nowhere from Hollywood's left, which is ironic because the Hollywood left is actually controlled by a center-right, like militaristic society that we have in this country. Hollywood in itself, Jim, there are countless articles that have come out where you talk about how much military recruitment there is, how many pro-CIA movies there are. I mean, I saw a movie the other day when it was like a little girl wants to be part of the CIA. Oh, what a Disney classic. Here she is facing down Putin and taking away. Really? Is this so? So you're talking about the same person waterboarding people, that denying food to areas where children are starving because we're making a tactical decision. That's the brutal mind that's involved in espionage. Please don't romanticize it, because I feel like that's more harmful to our society than any of the so-called culture wars that people pretend they're having. And rather than fighting some imaginary enemy, what we have to fight is actually a very real enemy of ignorance, of poverty. And these crimes that are compiled are not actually crimes against the state. that we see in these low income communities, Jim, but they're crimes of poverty. The justice system is applied to poor people. I mean, you can ask anybody who's been in jail, right, and say, hey, man, did you have a $2 million lawyer? No, I didn't. Well, do you think you would have gotten better off in your case if you had millions of dollars of resources and witnesses and testimony and experts to come look at you? Yes. So we see that now kind of mirrored in how we were talking about before in the pharmaceutical industry, in the medical industry. Yeah, if you got a disease, if you got coronavirus, it's a death sentence for you when you're poor. If you're financially well off, or you have the luxury to have insurance, then you know what? You got a better fighting shot. If you're a billionaire and you have lots of resources, well, man, you can live as we've seen. People have lived with HIV/AIDS for decades, right? They've lived with cancer and extended their lives, but that one's up in the air. But it does give you a better shot overall.
Right. Listen, there's a lot to unpack there, Felipe. But I think, just for the show, about an hour or two ago, one of those right-wing grifters passed on, Rush Limbaugh. Many of us, of course, taking a deep breath and are so thankful that Trump has been now out of our political system, at least as a president. But what you're pointing to is very, very important historically and morally and politically is, again, we're back with neoliberal Democrats who have pointed out have created their own level of oppression and exploitation that can be and it can even be worse than some of the things Trump was trying to accomplish. Correct? Is that?
Yeah, no, very, very much so. For example,
Right.
if Cuomo,
Yeah, go ahead.
no,
You're talking about grassroots movements here that
right.
can speak in a different direction. And I think this is profoundly important. This is the sort of dialogue we need to have, but we're not getting, obviously, in the mass media.
Well, all right, I'll give you an example of it. Do you remember maybe about a decade ago where there was the event at John Jay, and the president of John Jay came out and he said, I don't even know what restorative justice means.
Yeah.
You remember he came out, I have that on tape, and he said, oh, I don't, what restorative justice, what does that mean? Well, the lady, Amy Coney, who was in Central Park, who called the cops on a black bird watcher,
Right.
used a restorative justice program to get out of a jail sentence. Liberals will side with fascism over socialism because fascism does not threaten capital the way socialism does, right? So if we're having a discussion about what their motive is that there has always been a co-opting of these struggles, right? Like for example, when they talk about people not forgiving school debt, and they say, well, Mr. Biden had a chance to be a progressive and cancel $50,000 of school debt. But I think that there's another thing that people are missing. This is a neoliberal a regime, which means that it's very militaristic, right? Just like traditional neocon conservatives, just like Mr. Trump was very, very quietly without being as open about it with other people. So the sad part is that when we look at this society, the reason that people can't forgive school debt is not that just they don't want to be nice. It's because enlistment numbers for our military would drop off overnight if people thought to themselves, well, wait a minute, I don't need to risk my life to pay for college. I don't need that to have this. Well, what the hell am I doing that for? It's not that I'm a coward. It's not that I don't want to serve my country. It's just that I want to serve my family first and take care of their issues. And then I can come back and examine this.
You know that very well, that most of the students at John Jay do go into the military for just the reason you're talking about. And that was the event I think we both did at John Jay 10 years ago, one of the most corrupt institutions in the country. The so-called Premier Criminal Justice Academy, President Travis brought in Coke money to fund a lot of the programs there. And President Mason has continued to do that. And very little is known really about that sort of reality. But programs that were developed and created there, perpetuated, in many ways, perpetuate the neoliberal criminal justice system you're talking about. Who gets wealthy and who profits from it among other people, is the Academy. And they get the grants to do that. But you're absolutely right on that. Restorative justice, sort of structural, economic, political reforms we needed are not something that neoliberals are going to want. And you're absolutely right on the debt issue. That's what students and others are expected to get more and more into debt. And we need
I
to have
mean,
a military adventures to get them to fight overseas or wherever we want to fight, perpetuating that indebtedness.
I think also that this extends itself to the other things that we're going to see. For example, when Mr. Biden says that he's going to create a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people, I think that too many of the DACA people got excited and they said, oh man, that we're all saved. And they have to forget that a big percentage of those people are not going to be Central Americans, South Americans, right? Just like we seen Paul Ryan when he took the coward's way out. The last thing he did was naturalize 20,000 Swedish born immigrants. A lot of the people that are going to be naturalized are not Latinos, not Central Americans. They're Europeans that have come here from somewhere else. And it's so funny because I can't tell you how many people I've met who later on in life they were against immigration, but in the very beginning they came here without no papers. So their hypocrisy is
Right.
off the scale, right? So I know people, and they're Dominican, they're Mexican, and they're Greek and Italian, but these are all people that I've met personally that I know, and I'm just like, first of all, I mean, my friend's father was like that. He's a conservative Latino guy, and he was like, well, you know, I don't think these immigrants should be here. And I stopped for a second and I said, you have a
That's his
fake last
story.
name.
Right.
And he was
That's
like,
his
what?
story.
I said,
Yeah.
but your last name ain't your real name. And he stopped and he looked at me like I had just told the I said, don't worry, there's no ice in this room. I said, but that's not your real name. So let me ask you something. Why is it okay for you to quote unquote break the rules, which I don't even think that's breaking the rules. This is a settler colonial state that decided to make up its own laws and might as well have drawn borders with a Crayola. But the problem that I have here is that that sort of mentality is pervasive in the immigrant community. Let me get in and then fuck these people, get out, whatever it may be. And I think that that is the kind of model for immigrants here in this country. Get in and suffer for a little while you can, and then find someone to push the suffering on, right? Like take for example Italian immigrants, who I know a lot of Italian people, and they're like, man, I think that my parents and grandparents are ignorant. They've forgotten their past, right? And I
Right.
asked my friend who's Italian, I'm like, you know, how was it when your parents were here? Did they go through that? And they were like, absolutely. Like when they first came, when my grandparents and parents were growing up here, my grandparents came from Italy. A lot of my friends said that they were definitely not treated like white people, and that's true. When you look up the New York City Police Department, when the first Italian cop was put on the force, that was seen as breaking racial barriers, Jim. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now, when you see people who discuss immigration and you see right-wing Italian people, you see a total disconnecting with what their past and what their history is. As a matter of fact, even the insults that were invented for you people are based upon your immigration status. Like when you call an Italian person a WAP, that means that's an anagram. WOP, without papers. It means you're an illegal human being, I guess. That's what
Right.
they were saying.
So that goes beyond any particular ethnic or racial group, correct?
Yes, America
So
wishes in order for you to become part of the club, you have to kind of just, you know, uh, uh,
he's
uh, uh, make it rain down on the people that are lesser than you. And I think that what was interesting is that we saw this attempt after 9/11. Black and brown people were like, "Oh, I'm so gung ho to be American. I'm better than these Arab people," and white people and white supremacists were quick to be like, no, you're not. You're not. You're still gonna be choked to death for selling cigarettes and all kinds of other shit. And we're gonna handle these Middle Eastern people however we choose to. Oh, by the way, we're gonna destabilize Central Asia first, and then we'll get to the Middle East, which is exactly what happened because
yeah,
Afghanistan is not an Arab country; it's in Central Asia.
right, right. So in your music, in your artistry, in your lyrics, you've tried to express that. It's sort of a universal message, right?
Yeah.
Um, has it has it been difficult for you to be, or how is that accepted in your own community, for example?
I mean, by and large, I can't say that I get hatred. It's mostly nothing but love. The only people I've ever had an issue with are individuals that, let's say, um, are unhappy with some political message of mine, right? So they're diametrically opposed to my politics. But the problem is this: you don't have to like it, but revolutionary politics wouldn't sell in music if the music wasn't good, right? If I wasn't a talented writer, if I wasn't a lyricist.
Yeah,
So whether people like me or not, they're forced to respect me in that sense. Much the same if I meet an actor or a boxer or an MMA fighter or another rapper whose politics are different than mine. I have to respect them for what they've done, right? I can't automatically, oh man, I don't like this person, so I despise them. You know what I mean? I think that even when you look at a Rush Limbaugh when he died, I'm not clapping my hands. You know, my mom survived cancer. I'm sorry that he died of cancer, but I'm also sorry that this was another person that tried to take healthcare away from other people,
yeah,
and this
yeah,
wasn't necessarily a good person. So I'm not going to be here cheering someone else's death and seem hypocritical. But what I can say is it's hypocritical for people to mourn his death when he wasn't mourning anybody's death, right?
right,
So I,
right,
I
right.
think I think there's a way to be civil without kissing someone's ass and coming off like a shill. And then there's a way where you say, okay, well, I can't let this person's legacy be sanitized simply because they died,
Yeah.
right? Plenty of bad people are dead, you know.
So that's so profound, profoundly important what you're trying to get across. So the revolutionary politics, the transformative love, revolutionary love that you're talking, the restorative justice, et cetera, how do you concretize that? Does it there's something we can look at in terms of an emerging political party or within electoral
Right.
politics
I mean,
or grassroots political movements like what you're doing with the food program and so on? I mean,
I think the challenge. I
help
think the
our
challenge.
audience understand that better.
I think the challenge for indigenous and for African people who live here in the United States is that we're forced to choose between Pepsi and Coke, right? And when people take the easy way out and they say, "Oh well, both these parties are corrupt," and throw their hands up in the air, it's usually after they lose an argument where like the right wing sucks and then they retreat to that. But I've seen left wingers do that too when they lose an argument and they say, "Oh man, yeah, both sides are corrupt." Okay, tell me how they're corrupt then. It's just too easy of an argument. So that space in which, people say, oh, everything's corrupt, and then we talk about how it's corrupt and how it got to be this way, that's the space that I live in. That's the deep water I feel really comfortable swimming in. So I'm not intellectually intimidated by anybody. You know what I mean? I physically, I like, what are you going to do? You're sitting here and what you're doing is actually propagating something that's patently false. So if I'm going to expose that or show it, then I have to do that in a creative way, right? Like when people say, "Oh man, what is the 9/11 effect?" Well, I had to do a rhyme about it. There was the song called "The Cause of Death," which showed how these politics had been pushing people more to the right, so that anyone who was a so-called center left was now, you know what I mean, all the way on the left. Anyone who
Mhm.
was a right winger was now in the center. And people who were on the far right that were on the fringe and didn't really have a voice, well, they became part of the base of the party. Not the base, but they became a big part of the base.
So your artistry, your music, it takes us way beyond. It could easily lead to nihilism, but that's not what you're doing.
No, I
You
think
are,
that what the question is that we look at both of these interpretations, capitalism, which we see as a Ponzi scheme that was invented in England in the 15th century. Capitalism and communism are both European systems that were invented to rule European people. And then they tried to extend that and tweak them very, very slightly without actually addressing the things that affect indigenous people badly. So while we focus a lot in this country on the dictatorships of Castro and Hugo Chavez, there are people that had that title of dictator of a Latin American country for a plethora of political persuasions, but a lot of these were right-wing factions. And during this time in which these countries were overthrown and Latin America was restructured, we forget that this allowed the United States to use those cheap resources as a way to bolster itself before it entered into this kind of production and distribution deal that it has with China. Before everything started being made there in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, for a long time, everything that was rubber, everything that was the breadbasket. In other words, South America was to America what Carthage and what Egypt were to Rome. It was the breadbasket. And, it continues to be so. So I feel like we've always had this kind of shadow hanging over us in which any single time that Latin Americans decide to be self-determinant and want to escape the yoke of laissez-faire economics or something else like that, we're immediately charged with being communists, right? Oh, you guys must be a communist. You must be commies, everything, communism. I mean, that's all people have to do in today's modern society to get a fan base. You just got to go on YouTube and bash the left. As a matter of fact, if I took the phrase "the left" away from some of these grifters, they would lose half their vocabulary, because what they're actually complaining about is a caricature of what, like, an attempt at a culture war is by neoliberals. But the reality is that traditional leftists are not trying to ban guns. Traditional leftists are not trying to sit there and argue about a Black Lives Matter mural. They want substantive change. They stand with the people from the community. And the other part that happened, and the other big loss of the left is that there's no international solidarity, or there's very little in comparison to what there used to be. So it used to be, Jim, workers of the world unite. And now it's like, well, fuck those workers. Excuse my language. Forget those workers, right? We don't care about them. And then the question was, we want a bigger slice of the American pie, but never asking who's in the pie, how many kids' fingers came off on that conveyor belt to make these pies. Exactly. What are we putting in this? Is this even, are these ingredients even legal to give people? Because that's another thing. When I talked about the stuff that we had to give away to elders, we were careful in the selection of the food that we had, because we don't want GMOs. It's bad enough that we have to take perishables. I wish we could give away fresh food, but we don't have a license for that. But when we give away the perishables, we choose to go with more organic stuff, with stuff that has less chemicals. But once in a while, you got something, and that's the only product that's available. And in other countries, that doesn't exist. And unfortunately, whether you're a conservative or whether you're a progressive person, you can admit that both factions of the parts that are supposed to represent the right and the left in this country have conspired to not give you any kind of healthcare reform.
Right. But Felipe, you've traveled far and wide around the world and the country. So for our audience, is there structure out there? Is there a state that you could point to, a movement that you would strongly encourage, identify, and point to as moving us in the sort of direction you are talking about and writing about and singing about?
I think the hard part to look at with other countries is that it's difficult to fit into someone else's shoes. Like when people ask me about the quasi-socialist state in Scandinavia, I say, well, that's not actually socialism, but it has some tenets of it. So let's have this conversation. And then I'll say, well, this only works in this society because there are only this many millions of people in the country. When the numbers are much bigger, then it doesn't add up. And this is not just true for political science. It's actually true for science. When you talk about the Sir Newton's theory of gravity, right? And you use like a little ball or a ping pong ball or a beach ball. Well, sure, the numbers add up. But when you talk about the subatomic level, or you deal with the planetary scale, then the numbers don't match up. So obviously, it's a question of how we have to scale this based on the size of our people. But I will say that for a lot of us, that have been kind of in this abusive relationship with the United States for the better part of 400 years, we've seen that this government is totally willing to use, to oppress, and to exploit its own people, right? And not just black and brown people, but working class white people are on the chopping block. And now the curtain has been revealed on that. And it's striking to them that they realize this late in the game, wow, I've been on the chopping block this whole time. You know, the thing that we always say when I come on this show, that capitalists and communists both agree about one thing, that the amount of money you make every year does not determine your class. Class is determined by who controls the means of production. And how many people out there, Jim, actually control the means of production in their livelihood? Very few. So this is the struggle that people are maintaining now. How to gain actual independence.
Still evolving. So again, Reverend Barber, Poor People's Campaign, or we're having Nick Braun on the show in a couple of weeks too. Cornel West has gotten on board, at least for now, with the new People's Party. Is that you've been asked? I know we've worked with the Green Party and so on. In terms of party politics, do you see any hope there?
I think that Americans got a third party after Trump. It's just not the third party that they wanted. It's a splintering of the right wing. In other words, all the people that were Republicans, that were traditional Republicans, who actually voted to impeach Trump. They feel like he has too much power over that party. And now you have the Republican Party, which is the more right-wing aspect of that party, right? And they have a stupid answer for every smart question. But the reality is this, is that those people are a political faction now, right? Whether people like it or not. It's the third party that nobody wanted and nobody asked for. But there is some interesting truth to how Mr. Trump affected politics. On his way in, right? On this political season that we've had for the past 4 years has been interesting. On the way in to challenge Mr. Trump for the presidency, Clinton, right, with the aid of Trump, because Mr. Trump borrowed a lot of far left talking points to attack Hillary Clinton. Mr. Trump ended up, his campaign ended up splitting the left, right? It was the Bernie faction, right? You remember very clearly because you were there, Jim. You said, man, this is a robbery. I can't believe that the Democratic Party did this to Mr. Sanders. This is just blatant, and it's corrupt, and it's just sad. And we had a long conversation about it. But those people were affected, and a lot of them said, okay, I'm not a part of this anymore. I'm changing factions. But irrespective of their perspective on it, on his way in, his campaign succeeded in splitting the left. Maybe they were already split, Jim. We know that they didn't get along. We know that they had different visions of what liberalism and progressivism was. Many of the traditional corporate Democrats were the Obama-style progressive, which is just in name, really. And a lot more people wanted to take actual action, legislative progressives, which I can appreciate a lot more. But on his way out, on his way in, he split the left. On his way out, Mr. Trump split the right wing of the party, right? To the point where you had evangelicals who should be loyal to Mr. Pence because they've never seen Mr. Trump read a passage out of the Bible. Not one. He can't name one Bible verse, but you pick him over a lifelong Christian, a proven guy, a guy who checks all of the lists, doesn't even sit with other women when he meets with them, and has to have his wife present, versus a guy with 3 baby mamas.
My heart, what's splitting us right now is not only God, time, this is going so fast. Plus, there's ton of stuff. You got to come back, and we want to tell people that you're in your studio right now. And I've intentionally not asked you this because I know we are all waiting for that. Some more, whatever music will be so appreciated and loved. Okay, number 2. We only have 30 seconds more. You got to come on again. We need to have a more extensive conversation on this. Happy birthday! We do share a birthday in a couple of days, and I am your elder, but I'm not that old, and we do have
just a couple years
lot of young
older than me.
people. watch the show, and many will because you're on. And we love you so much, Felipe. I just wish we could go on and on. And I know we both talk for hours and hours and hours. We'd love to hear more from you. Right now, just take it easy. Be strong. Be happy. Be
Thank you very
healthy.
much.
Thank you so much for all you're doing,
Thank you.
and love you so very very much. Okay,
Great.
take
Just
care,
want to
man.
end by saying that if anyone wants to check us out, we're on social media at Rebel Army Runs, just regular spelling at Rebel Army Runs. And towards the middle of the year, we're going to open up for volunteers, the people that want to help.
Wonderful. Let's expand it, not just in New York City, around the country, around the world.
Around the country. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, man. Take care. All the best.
Thank you for having me on the show.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Happy birthday.
All right.
And thank you so very, very, very much again for watching us on this wonderful show with Immortal Technique, Felipe Coronel. All the best, and we'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vrettos.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California, well, to the New York Island, yeah. From the Redwood Forest, well, to the Gulf Stream water. Ooh, let me tell you that this land was made for you and me. Yeah. As I was walking down that ribbon of a highway, you know now I saw above me, yes I did, that endless skyway. Yeah. You know now I saw below me that golden valley, and I said to myself, if this land was made for you and me. Yeah. So wait a minute. Wow, I'm still walking on. And they tried to stop me. Yeah. They put up a big old sign that read, this sign that read, private property. Well, but I looked around on the backside, and on the backside, it read nothing. And I said to myself, Sharon, that sign was made for you and me. Ah, yeah. Come on, come on. One bright sunny morning, wow, in the shadow of the steeple, it was down by the welfare office, yeah. I looked and I saw all kind of people, yeah. Some of them stood there, they was hungry, homeless. I scratched my head, looking, and I was wondering over and over and over again. I said, if this land was made for you and me, yeah. This land is your land. Hey, hey, this land is my land. Oh, from Riverside, California to New York, way out there in Staten Island, yeah. Don't you forget Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, North Carolina, South Carolina. Oh, I'm talking about this land was made for you and me. You know that this land, ooh, wow, this land was made for you. This land was made for me. You and me, me and you, me and me. Oh, this land was made for you and me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.